Before we begin, I just want to remind you that Somewhere Sinister is back up and running. We're getting through Season 4 and already starting to work on Season 5, so if you like this show, you'll probably like that one, so check it out. A link is in the description. On December 12, 2022, police officers in Queensland, Australia approached a house while doing a welfare check on a missing person. Little did they know that inside the house were 3 paranoid religious extremists who believed that the world was coming to an end, and that those very officers were there to kill them. This is Monsters. Brothers Gareth and Nathaniel Train grew up in Queensland, Australia. They were 47 and 45 respectively, so they would have experienced childhoods in the 80s and 90s. They were the sons of the local Baptist pastor Ronald Train, and their religion had a large influence over their lives. It just so happened that Ronald was a bit of a religious extremist and had some pretty strict views on marriage. He also refused to allow any woman to hold a leadership position in his church. The brothers also had 2 other siblings, another brother and a sister. Gareth was said to have been a problem from early on. He regularly got into trouble at school and had a volatile personality. He was controlling and had an unhealthy obsession with guns. His younger brother Nathaniel, however, was a good student who tried to do the right thing. Unfortunately, Gareth's influence pulled Nathaniel down into a world of violence and conspiracy theories. Nathaniel met Stacey at church and the couple married before they were even out of their teens. They would have 2 children together in the years they were married, but the bliss wouldn't last long. In the years that followed, Gareth and Nathaniel cut ties with their parents and moved away. The reason for that was unclear, but they took Stacey and the children with them. The same year, Stacey would end up leaving Nathaniel and marrying Gareth while the 3 continued to live together. It was an odd situation, but likely one the others were convinced into by Gareth's controlling behavior. They moved around Queensland for years together, all working at schools. Nathaniel was a principal, Stacey was a teacher, and Gareth was a school groundskeeper. Eventually, Nathaniel got a job somewhere in northern Queensland and moved away from his brother and ex-wife/sister-in-law. While away, Nathaniel met and married another woman named Vanessa, but that relationship didn't last long either. Gareth and Stacey would end up purchasing a house at 251 Waynes Road in Wieambilla, about 4 hours west of Brisbane. Wieambilla is a very rural area in the Western Downs region of Queensland. The area has a population of less than 100 residents and is commonly used to harvest natural gas from coal beds. It was officially nowhere until it was cut up into blocks and sold off in the 1970s. Many people bought the cheap pieces of land as places to retire or as a means of getting out of the city. One of those blocks of land was purchased by Alan and Carrie Dare. They had lived in Ipswich and owned a truck which they used to make furniture deliveries. They purchased the land and spent the following 8 years paying it off and getting it ready to live on. These blocks of land were completely raw, and the couple spent that time clearing the land and building a home out of a number of shipping containers. They shut down their business in 2019 and moved out to the property where they spent every minute finishing up the renovations to their new home. Once they were done, the COVID pandemic kept them inside, but Carrie would later say she didn't mind the quiet time in their new abode with her husband and their cats. That idyllic life would last for the next few years until their neighbors put an end to it. While in Wieambilla, Gareth began to become increasingly paranoid and obsessed with a number of conspiracy theories. After a few years, Nathaniel moved back and the 3 continued working in education. Nathaniel and Stacey were the principals of 2 different schools, and some sources say Gareth was working as a teacher. Trouble at the school started when Gareth began slaughtering pigs on school grounds and hanging the carcasses near the football field. That eventually led to Gareth quitting his job with the school. Their home lives were becoming more erratic. They installed barbed wire around their property and put up surveillance cameras and floodlights. Gareth was online writing about various conspiracy theories and claiming he was building an ark. There are people who believe in one or two things that most would call conspiracy theories, and I get it. It's naive to think the government is always telling you the truth, but Gareth believed in all of them. Chemtrails, that the Port Arthur massacre was an inside job, that Princess Diana was killed as a blood sacrifice, also 9/11 was a blood sacrifice, the sovereign citizen movement, climate change denial, and that the CIA invented the internet to spy on people. Ironically, Gareth used the internet to post his belief in all of the above conspiracy theories. Of course, once the COVID pandemic hit, Gareth, Nathaniel, and Stacey all believed it was a conspiracy. In August of 2021, Nathaniel had a massive heart attack and had taken some time off of work to recover. A few months later, he was told he needed to get a COVID vaccination since he was working at a school. It was something that Stacey was also being asked to do, but the two were resisting. That resulted in Nathan being fired and Stacey quitting. From that point on, Nathaniel disappeared. Now, he hadn't actually gone missing. He was living with Gareth and Stacey, but he was not going out and not communicating with anyone else. October of 2001 was the last time he had communicated with anyone outside of the home. Now that all three residents of the house in Wieambilla were out of work, it was fortunate that they had retrofitted the house to be completely off-grid. They had solar panels and water tanks that let them continue being able to operate the house pretty normally. Of course, that wasn't to prepare them to be out of work. It was because they believed the apocalypse was coming. Throughout 2022, the three trains had descended into extreme religious and conspiracy beliefs. Nathaniel's second wife Vanessa had spent much of 2022 contacting family members looking for Nathaniel. She knew he was likely with his brother, but she wanted to make sure he was okay. In July and in August, the trains warned family to stop contacting them and to stop looking for Nathaniel. They had even threatened Vanessa, but she wanted confirmation that he was okay. So on December 4th, she filed a missing persons report with the New South Wales Police in the area where she still lived. The New South Wales Police contacted the Queensland Police and requested they do a welfare check at the train property in Wieambilla. There was also an arrest warrant for Nathaniel for making an illegal border crossing between New South Wales and Queensland during the pandemic lockdown. On December 12, 2022, two officers out of nearby Tara, 26-year-old Matthew Arnold and 29-year-old Rachel McCrow, along with two officers out of Chinchilla, Keely Brough and Randall Kirk, both 28, arrived at the train property at about 4:30 p.m. They parked just off the road at the driveway and honked their horns to get the residents' attention. They received no response, but the trains knew that they were there. They had a camera hidden in the mailbox which captured the officers arriving on the scene. Having the intention of looking for a missing person, the officers hopped to the gate and began looking around the property. As the officers were walking up the driveway, gunfire rang out from the house and from a concealed sniper hideout. Matthew and Rachel were both struck by bullets while Keely and Randall dashed for cover. Matthew and Rachel's injuries weren't fatal. Matthew had been shot in the spine and Rachel in the leg. They had a chance to make it out of there alive, but Gareth exited the house and shot both of them point blank in the head, essentially executing them right there. Then the three extremists made a disturbing video titled "Don't Be Afraid" and posted it on YouTube. In the video, which authorities have asked people not to share so I won't, Nathaniel and Stacey claim that the police had come there to kill them, so they killed the officers first. Then they said that anyone who doesn't defend themselves against those devils and demons were cowards. Now, the first problem with that video is that the police were absolutely not there to kill them. That's a delusion stemming from years of paranoia and thinking everything in the world is some conspiracy meant to threaten their lives. The police were there for a welfare check, which is pretty much the opposite of having the desire to kill anyone. Their intention was to ensure that Nathaniel was alive and was okay. Now, he had a warrant out for his arrest, so they likely would have arrested him. But it wasn't the Wild West where a vigilante posse was bringing him in dead or alive. They would have just handcuffed him and put him in one of the police vehicles. Also, in the video they gave a message to someone named Don. That would turn out to be a 58-year-old man named Donald Day, who sent the train's Christian end-of-days ideological messages in the year and a half before what would become known as the first Christian extremist terrorist attack in Australia. He was eventually arrested and charged with one count of inciting violence online in Arizona in the United States a year later in connection with the event. Fortunately, Randall was able to get back to his vehicle unscathed and called for backup, but Keeley was hiding out in some tall grass. As they waited, the trains were dead set on making them part of their body count. In an effort to smoke Keeley out of her cover, the trains lit a number of grass fires around their property. They also set one of the police cars on fire. Alan and Carrie Dare had heard the gunshots at about 4:30 that day, but in such a rural area, it's not entirely uncommon to hear. Alarm bells weren't raised until they heard what sounded like an explosion and black smoke was rising into the air. Alan and a neighbor, Victor Lewis, went out to investigate, and by the time they made it to the front of the train's property, the vehicle was already so burnt that they couldn't tell it was a police car. They noticed that the fire was spreading to the bushes and started trying to put it out. Alan was filming the scene on his phone and suddenly he fell to the ground. The trains had begun shooting at them and Alan had been hit in the back. Victor dove to the ground and tried to help his neighbor, but he quickly noticed the bullet wound and he believed Alan was already dead. By then, other officers had arrived on the scene and the three murderers were firing shots, keeping the police from coming in and arresting them. 16 officers from the Special Emergency Response Team, or CERT, were called in to handle the situation. Over the next few hours, a gunfight ensued that would end up seeing all three extremists dead. At about 10:30 p.m., Gareth, Nathaniel, and Stacey Train were declared dead and the scene was quiet. Matthew Arnold had been an officer for about 2.5 years. His family said he was a bigger-than-life character who was kind and caring. He was a triplet, and his loss has left a huge hole in his two siblings' lives. He was about to leave on Christmas vacation to visit his family when he received the call for the welfare check. Rachel McCrow had been an officer for 1.5 years who was remembered as being bright and happy. She loved her dogs and was a good friend and roommate of Matthew. Randall Kirk survived but caught shrapnel in his leg. He had surgery and was expected to make a full recovery. Keeley Broff also survived by hiding in the grass. Alan died just 2 days before his and Carrie's 26th wedding anniversary. She still lives there in their retirement home next to their neighbors, Victor and Gail Lewis. After the attack, it was revealed that Gareth had posted a video on December 11th, claiming the police wanted to silence Nathaniel because he was going to blow the whistle on a scandal happening in the New South Wales school system. In the video, he taunted the police, daring them to come to his property. On the morning of December 12th, another video was posted that showed a letter that Stacey had written where she described that her children had disowned them and she claimed it was because, quote, they had chosen the world, rejecting us and the narrow path to take the wide road that their partners and friends were on. These two videos showed just how close to breaking the trains were, and it was an unfortunate coincidence that the police showed up that day to do a welfare check. In Gareth's paranoid and delusional mind, they had taken his dare and were coming for Nathaniel. But his videos got almost no views, so the likelihood that the authorities had him on their radar is unlikely. In the end, two young police officers trying to ensure the safety of a citizen and a neighbor who was just minding his own business were killed because Gareth, Nathaniel, and Stacey allowed themselves to slip down a rabbit hole, increasingly believing that everyone and everything was out to get them. In the end, their lives were in danger, but only from their own monstrous actions. If you're a fan of true crime, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. You can also hit like or leave us a comment. You can check out our other show, Somewhere Sinister, on YouTube or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to support the show, check out our merchandise at thisismonsters.com. The link is in the description. Thanks again, and be safe.